So let me start with a pretty brief introduction here. Many of you already know me as I've been involved in the community for a few decades now, and going back to the old school forums, you'd have seen me around as the username Sebastian. That's just to date myself here a little bit. And I've worked at the highest level of chocolate and cocoa and milk and sugar and all the raw materials for a long time. I've worked on 6 continents. I've built supply chains from the ground up. I've built huge factories. I've helped create small individual proprietor businesses. At last count, I think I've created somewhere close to 6,000 formulas, and I've lived in jungles and dined with royalty and pretty much everything in between. It's been a really fortunate experience for me. Many of you know me in the story, but I don't want to talk about that. I want to use this time to introduce you to something that I think is much more interesting, which is Atlas. Atlas is a purpose-built system specifically for chocolate. I built it for myself, mainly as a project to see if I could. I've used, there's a lot of systems out there, and I've used all of them, and they all are kind of terrible and super expensive or none of them are purpose built for chocolate. Actually, there are a couple that are purpose built for chocolate, but they're super sophisticated and they're not ones that you're ever going to even know exist, much less have access to because they're intellectual property. Um, so I built the one that I wish that I always had, and I started using it, and I've got thousands of those formulas and routinely get asked to help, solve this problem or guide that decision somewhere in the world. And so this is a good way for me to consolidate all those things together. I needed some place to consolidate all my information together. But then as people began to see me use this thing I built, they began asking if they could buy it or license it, and I said, sure, why not? And then more people began asking for it, and then suppliers began asking for it. And so I've decided that I'm going to formally put it out there. And let me explain a little bit as to why. Um, Chocolate making is just hard, right? There's lots of complex regulatory things, and there's lots of processing challenges, and it's difficult for the small to medium user to know what information to keep straight, or even know which is important enough to try to figure it out. You guys have all, I'm sure, experienced where you ask one question and you get 37 different answers, and none of them really help because they're all in conflict with one another. And I don't think that anybody's trying to intentionally upset the apple cart here. It's just that oftentimes um, you're not equipped to know what really the right answer is. And there may not be a right answer, right? There just may be different ways of doing it. So if you don't have a couple decades of experience or you don't have a department of people to help you figure it out, it's just hard. Um, there's not a lot of good public information available, and while there is a tremendous amount of it, it's sort of tied up in trade secrets. Um, Most of you just don't have teams of experts to figure it out. And trying to send everything out to a team of experts is prohibitively expensive. But that still doesn't really answer the question as to why I'm doing it. At the core of it, it goes back to the fact that I've just spent years living in jungles with cocoa farmers, and I know just how exceptionally difficult that life is. Since you guys represent a group of people, right, the small to mid-sized users of cocoa who tend to differentiate uh, their cocoa beans on flavor quality, right? You buy a very different type of bean than much of industry does. If there are things that I can do to decomplex your world and to enable growth, then you'll buy more of those quality beans at a higher price, right? It's a decommoditization of the cocoa bean for the farmer and allows them to create an expanded portfolio of offerings where they can produce something that gives more value to them, which helps to increase their standard of living. So what's good for the bee is good for the hive, so to speak. Um, so what is Atlas? I'm actually not going to answer that question in detail right here. It's there's going to be a website that you'll see, and I'm going to put a bunch of videos up on YouTube that will walk through it. It's fairly comprehensive, right? It'll manage all your raw materials and your suppliers and your formulas, and does regulatory stuff and labeling stuff and production stuff and quality stuff, and pricing and margin management. It's a reasonable tool, right? It's the democratization of large company tools down to something that is accessible for a broader group of people. So there's a number of copies that are out there, various versions spread around the world. We're getting pretty close to putting this thing out here right now. There's some PC beta testing that's occurring right now. The Mac version has been stable for a very long time now. Um, and as soon as I'm comfortable that the PC version is stable, and I'm going to build in a couple more features for it before I launch it, then we'll get her up and running for everybody. So anyway, thanks for taking the time to listen, and here's to making more incredible chocolate.